Okay, now can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay, good, good. Now
Good.
everything's good.
Hello, Ollie. It's fantastic. It's an absolute pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you. I really appreciate it. We had a fantastic conversation the other day in my
Yes, we did.
car. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I just thought, you know what, I wanted to kind of go over just talk about some of this stuff, talk about some of the points. I find you a fascinating character, and because of what's going on in the UK, I kind of find a lot of the stuff we talked about quite relatable.
yeah.
So that was one of the the most important things. I think that the audience will again appreciate a lot of the stuff. So I just wanted to kind of enlarge on some of those things. And one of the things I want to talk about is obviously before, because obviously the audience don't know who you are. Maybe they do know who you are, but it's like what I love about you is your desire to do something within the community. The social aspect of your life, the way you are concerned. You're a humanitarian, and it's wonderful to meet people that do care about the planet, do care about people. And I wanted to know what's behind this drive, your consideration for mankind.
I think my drive comes from my family because I grew up in a family that basically just fed people. I found out from my father long before he passed away that my grandmother would just feed people in the area, which, if you think about it, back in the turn of the century was a very dangerous thing to do. White people would come through the area, and if you fed somebody white, you're taking your life in your hands. But my grandmother would do that anyway. So it didn't matter about the color. If the person was hungry, the person needed something, they were in the area, my grandmother would do that. And then I found out on my mother's side, my grandmother, Weta, she did the exact same thing too. So it's kind of cool to see that. I mean, to have that kind of flow through your family that no matter how dangerous the circumstances were, that people would still be people. They'd still be human. They'd feed anyone. They'd help anyone. So yeah, that just inspires me all the time.
So what would you describe that to? Would you say that's a cultural thing, or that was something within just your family, or was it something that the whole of the community did? Was it just your family did it, or was it a community thing?
I don't know so much about the rest of the community, but I
Okay.
know my family did it, and I could honestly I could see the other people in the community not doing that because it was a very dangerous thing to be doing things like that. Around 1900 to like 1930s up to 1940, even up to the 1950s in the
Mm.
United States, to be able to go out and just help a white person like on the street or whatever is a very dangerous thing. People
Wow.
would come after you, chase you down, even lynch you then. So
So we talk about helping white people. What are we talking about here? You talking about but these were white people that didn't have enough food.
yes, yes. In the South, yeah, there's a lot of white people in the South that were starving at the time. Yeah,
Wow.
that's some part of this history that people don't talk about it. They talk about how black people and
Mm.
people of other people of color were suffering. That's true, but there's a lot of white people that didn't have food too. So they were wandering around lost, just like a lot of black people were. People were hungry. People were looking. They were looking for someone to help them, just a helping hand. And at that time, that was very dangerous, And now it's kind of like things have shifted since the whole Trump era. And now it's even become very dangerous now to reach out and help somebody of another color,
Wow.
because people are now pushing, like you said, the pushback and all kinds of things are happening. So you have to be very careful about helping people, but that can't stop you from helping people. You still have
You
to
see,
find a way to
so
help.
when you talk about the pushback, you're referring to the what is it? What's it called again? Oh God, the white backlash. The white backlash. That's
Yes,
what
yeah,
the
very
black
much so.
backlash and white backlash. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Interesting. Well, you know what? I find that even more inspiring. The fact that you were willing to take that risk. Your family was willing to take that risk. I mean, I was just reading, in fact, watching a program, and it might have no relevance, bear any relevance at all to this. But when you look at the 80s in America, and we had all the crack cocaine going in
Yes.
certain parts of America. And what the first thing that came to my mind, and maybe it's the wrong for me. How dare I even consider this? But the reality is, I thought, well, why are we selling cocaine to our people? We know it's not a good thing to do. We know there's a damage. Okay, it's make a lot of money, but it's very dangerous for the community. But we still did it. Black people still get sold crack cocaine
Yes.
to their own people. And there's some cases where there were black people selling crack cocaine to their own family members to make
Yes.
money. It's like, so when you talk about this stuff, it's like it's a wonderful other side to that negative stereotype that we see presented to the world.
Right. Right. And I know you found out that, and of course, in my family, I always suspected that the American government was involved. And the American government was involved,
In
to
terms
the
of
to
you're
the
talking
country.
about in terms of distribution of drugs or allowing, because the
Drugs,
police were
cocaine.
doing the police were
Yeah.
doing very little. They were literally walking by and ignoring the fact that black people was selling drugs in their community in the way they were. So it was certainly, I don't know what conspiracy is the right word to use, but it certainly was a desire to damage the Black community at that point in time.
Yes. And a lot of people in the Black community, you have to remember, if the educational level is really down in certain areas, and you know, it was because education historically for Black America has always been destroyed. I mean, I found out like only like the last maybe 5 or 6 years that the American government would allow so much money to come into an area for education, like for the schools. Well, certain schools would get more money, even if they didn't deserve it at all. And usually it was the upper elite white schools would get more money, and the Black schools would be suffering. So that's been going on for decades, you know. And so if you have an uneducated populace, they're not able to like really get good jobs or to take care of themselves. So when you can introduce something like crack cocaine or other drugs, it's almost like they're drawn to it because it's like one way out. You know, they don't see the educational part to where they can be educated and get out, but they see the drugs and they see things like that where they can be able to like make money, quick money, and do well. But of course, you don't do well because all that whole mentality is that if you're like a criminal and you want to like be able to get out of your circumstances, you're just playing into the hands of a racist government that wants to do damage to you anyway. You know, so and I think I felt very fortunate to I came up in a family that believed in education no matter what. And I know a lot of poor families don't get that because a lot of poor families are seeing kids growing up in those families believe the only way out usually is through some kind of criminal activity or through sports, you know, and that's very limited. And so we have that stereotype that's been put up on Black Americans, and Black Americans have bought into a lot of that stereotype. But thank goodness, as time has gone on, that they're starting to break away from it. They're starting to see that being an engineer, even being a policeman, being a trashman, being anything within society that does something good is legitimate.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can still see the damage, you know, the damage of that period of the 80s is still being felt today because
yes, it is.
Because what a lot of it down, I mean, obviously, I don't know how serious. Well, it actually is. I watched the Barbershop, and with Ice Cube.
Yes.
And the themes in that are still, the gang violence is still there, the drug violence, the drug issues, all of those things are still happening because of a period in history which created this division and allowed people to realize the amount of money they could make by selling drugs in their community. And they chose sides. But again, all of this makes what you're doing more impressive. So can you tell us what actually are you doing? There's a few things that you're involved in. Can you just give us a bit more of an idea about what that's all about?
Okay. Well, I started what's called Herman's Place, which is named after my father. And actually, my son named it, which is really kind of cool. I called him up and I said, I'm going to start this free food restaurant. What do you think I should name it? He said, well, Herman's Place, because that's what Grandpa used to do. So it fell into that. And it started April 22nd of last year, like pretty much like basically almost 1 month after the pandemic really hit in this country. So it's been going on. So we celebrated a 1-year anniversary, fed nearly 1,000 people. And we're still doing that. We're still moving forward, still feeding people. And just think it's only running on donations alone. There's no government money. There's no major money from any corporation, none of that. Just by people believing in what we do. So that gives me so much hope that there's people that actually believe in something good. They can see something good and believe in it and not be jaded and not feel like everything is a scam, because I understand that. Everything like around us seems to be some kind of scam, some kind of ripoff, some kind of people playing with people's minds. And it's hard because if you live like that and believe that way, then you're jaded and you won't be able to see something truly good in front of you. So, and I think what we've been doing has been truly good. So, and I'm really proud of that.
No. I've heard mentions on obviously on Facebook, and I've been talked about, and obviously just power to you for trying to do something. And it's not something I've ever done, and I like to, but certainly something I'd love to do. We have a similar thing called soup kitchens in the UK, things like that. But before we move on, can I say, are you happy with because your face is kind of, it's restricted. I can't really, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, come on. You're a handsome guy. You don't want to miss. People are going to miss out. They're going to say, you know what, we want to see Ollie. Come on, it's all good. So there's a thing again. What you're doing, power to patients. That's something that there was advertisements on everything else in America. What's that about? The power to patients.
That was something I got involved with this artist by the name of Stan Hurd. And Stan Hurd is a world-renowned artist. What he does is all those crop carvings like you see around the world. He does a lot of those. And I've known him since I was a kid. I met him when I was a kid. My father worked on his house. And my father, when he was working on his house, he said, I want you to meet somebody. He said, there's an artist and you're into art. So, and I went over his house and he did this incredible carving, and which is like on the front of his first book. And he did it later on in the earth. And so I met him. And so he called me up. He said, I'd like for you to come out and be a part of this organization. He said, that's doing this about patients. And I said, okay. So and I catered it too through Herman's Place. So I fed the crew that was from Hollywood. And then he said, hey, you and your business partner, Julie, who's my business partner, he said, would you guys like to be in the filming of this? He said, we're going to make this, he said, they're going to make this commercial about patients and the power of patients. And now they should have these rights. And I said, well, of course, so, and Shepard Fairey, who is the great artist here in this country, who's a graffiti artist. And he actually is beyond, he's more than that. But he did the poster, he created the poster behind the video that we're in, and Stan just redid that poster. Stan repainted and put it up on a barn wall, and that's us standing in front of it. So we got to be part of that commercial. So,
well, yeah, and you've got all these celebrities involved in that campaign as well.
Yes, very much so.
The reason why I wanted to talk about it, because I wanted people to get an idea of who you are and the person that we're talking to, because it's like when we have these conversations, people sometimes when we talk about Black history, Black community, whatever it may be, there's always people think, well, there's always, how people feel about it. Not people aren't as trusting, but everything you're doing is coming from the heart. It's coming from a man who cares about society. We're very similar in that respect. That's, in my view, we're very similar. That's how I
love that.
That's why we're having a conversation. That's why we're,
right on.
We have a kind of similar minds. But there are a few questions I want to ask, and obviously one of the things I want to gain some people to understand more about you is, you've done this. You've written music for astronauts. Was it cosmic music? How did you get involved in that? And my brother told me about that. That's how I know. My brother said to me, okay, Ollie has made music. But my brother's a bit of a, he's an intellectual, and he's got high IQ, so he's on that same level with yourself. So tell me a bit more about that. These cosmic music that you made and how you got to do that.
Well, how I got to do that, it was just basically I just tried. Okay, so I contacted NASA, and NASA had all these sounds. And the CD set I'd done is a 2 CD set. It's called Songs of the Planets. And what it is, it's the electromagnetic waves from the planets like Jupiter and Mars and Saturn were turned into sounds. Okay, wow, they turned into sounds decades ago. So I didn't write the music. What I did is that I downloaded it and I remixed it.
Oh, wow.
I cleaned it up and I put it on the CD set. Okay, and NASA, and you have to jump through a lot of hoops for NASA. NASA says you have to meet all those criteria. The packaging has to look good. Everything has to be like this super high-end quality stuff. Like I'm used to working in a high-end quality, but not really that high-end quality. So I had to really shoot for it. So it took me 2 years to remix the sound, put all the packaging together and all the editing and everything. And it's dedicated to the 3 ladies who are in the Hidden Figures, which is Katherine Johnson, and I have the ladies. I just remember Katherine Johnson because I only made contact with her because the other 2 ladies had passed away. But those are the ladies in Hidden Figures. And so it's dedicated to them and what they did. Because I don't know if you know, but Katherine Johnson's calculations are still being utilized to this very day for NASA. To be able to I don't know.
No, it's way over my head, but I'm impressed.
How incredible that woman was. She just passed away last year.
Absolutely. Yes. She's the Black woman. Yes, absolutely. Yes. I know. Yes.
All three of those
yes,
Black women.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm very much aware. Yeah. Of course. That's not, I didn't miss that.
They never really got any
recognition.
Recognition at all. Only just recently in the last couple of years did they. So I dedicated all 3 of those women who just broke down these barriers, and they were human computers. And I just recently read this. I just think maybe the last 3 or 4 days, that NASA still has, and this is amazing, Katherine Johnson's calculations, whatever they have in the computer now, it's just thinking, as amazing as computers are now, they still go back and check the computer calculations against Katherine Johnson's calculations that she did on a blackboard. That is incredible. A computer being checked against a woman's or against a person's calculations to make sure this, just to see if the computer is right. Not if she is right, the computer is right. So when you have that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, it's incredible, incredible, and it makes you kind of, and it makes you wonder how and why these people who have done such incredible things, people of color, but then their history is, one would say, erased, is all or hidden.
Yes,
Some people would say actually it's there, but we just haven't found it. You know,
right.
other people know about it, but we just aren't in the places, or we're not looking for the history. So it's like it hasn't been hidden at all. It's just there. You know, go to university, you look for the right books, you'll find it. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it's hidden
found,
in plain sight.
yeah, exactly, and in plain. That's a great way to say it, in plain sight. But I get it. I get all that stuff, and that talking about that again, this idea, because obviously we're going now talking about. For me, we're talking about what it is to be black and what the experiences have been. For
Right.
myself in the UK, I'm finding, you know, of late that it's almost as if being black, me saying I'm black, and I am black, but me saying I'm black, it's almost like I'm hijacking the term black. You know, the black, what blackness is. It's almost like there are black people that will say to me that you're not black enough,
Right.
you know, you don't really fit into blackness, whatever it is. And that's what I'm picking up, you know, around when I look around the internet or whatever it may be. It's just conversations. Okay, I don't see that in America. In America, there's a homogeneity there. It's almost as if you're black, you're black. You're like whatever it is, you've got a drop
Right.
of black blood. And why is it? I mean, obviously, I don't understand what it is. But why is it that you have that kind of unity in America, but we don't have it in the UK? Do you think?
I don't know. I think that what's happened, and I think, and it does, it's gone back to racism because I don't know if you know, but in the South, that the Southern whites really wanted to make sure that there was an incredible separation, which is spread across this country. I mean, just intellectually, economically, and just it really has. And it's that if you had like one drop of black blood in you or Native American blood, then you weren't considered white. That put a lot of people like on alert, basically. You know, it's like,
Mm,
okay, since I'm not accepted, then I will go to the side or go to the place where I am accepted.
mm,
And like I think I told you, my kids are half white and black. And
mm,
so we discuss this all the time. So like my son came to me and we did, like I said, he came to me and he said, Dad, black people have a hard time accepting me being black, and white people won't accept me for being white. So what am I? I said, like I think I told you, I said, you're a human being. It's not only just a human being, you are the future of the world.
mm,
The combination of all these races come together, that's what is going to happen. Whether black people, Hispanic, Asian, or whomever, no matter what race, wants to accept that or not, we are all going to be one color. What's going to come down to is your character, like Dr. King said, the content of your character. You know,
mm,
either you're a good person or you're not. Because sooner or later, all this, because colorism and color is designed as a construct to keep us all apart.
mm,
So you can say, I'm black and I don't need to deal with you because you're white. I'm white and you don't need to deal with you because I'm black. You can use that as much as you want. And that's what's been going on. And that's what's been going on for centuries in this country. But it's coming to a head to the point where there's so many people of mixed race that no one can say that anymore. It's just going to be, are you a good person or not? Well, basically, it's either yes or no. There will be no in between ground.
you know, that's, you know, that's an idea of a utopia, and obviously I would agree with you that that was always, I mean, I used to think that would be the answer, you know, to how do we solve racism. That's the answer. But when you have like groups where people are getting to this point where there's this purists, you know, this idea, like almost like, you know, the
Right.
Aryans who are purists, and you've got black people who are purists who are saying, okay, I'm black, and you know, I've got to be with a black person. That's going to prevent any of that mixing, any of that kind of idea that you're talking about. That's an impossibility when people are going to those extremes, or what they consider to be natural. A black person should be with a black person, a white person should be with a white person. How can we ever get to the point where we have this utopia that you're talking about?
Yeah, honestly, I don't think it's not so much a utopia. I think it's the progression of mankind because we're going to progress to where where people are intermixing so much that there are going to be more people of just one color, one race. Then of course, there'll be these subgroups, which will be like people who want to be purist. I understand it; they'll still
Mm,
exist, but I think they're going to be in the future. They're going to be outnumbered because that's how everything is going. People are mixing more and more and more. They're
mm,
getting past all of that. What the problems will be in the future will still be mankind's character, will
mm,
be people, will be classism, things like that. Oh, if racism disappears, don't worry. I'm sure there's something else mankind will find to take its place because mankind is that way. You know, if it's not race, it'll be class. You know, it'll be something. So we'll always have those problems. Will be there. But I think hopefully as time goes on in the future, the next 100 years or so, the racism will become less because more and more people will become mixed. But
mm.
then again, you still have the division of religions, division of class. You still have those things too. So
yeah, well, it's so you're saying it's human nature and it's not much. But it's an element of evolution that's going to change this naturally.
yeah, I think naturally we're gonna go in that direction where more and more people will become one color, but that still won't stop all the other divisions. I don't think, and of course there probably would be the divisions of shade, like there has been in this country, where a black person of light color skin was considered better than a black person of darker color skin. You've had that going on forever and ever too.
And coming back to that, and that's again, I think that is probably the issue. It seems to be that what happened in America or what happened on those plantations has continued on. There seems to be this idea because that's what I can't make sense. I can't make sense of any of it of the fact that I have to, I'm kind of being ignored as a person. I see myself as black. I've always believed I represent what it is to be black. But again, as I said to you, there are people that just don't think that way. And I don't know how we got to that place. I'm confused at how we at this point now where Black Lives Matters has come forward and done what it's done, and it's talking about Black Lives Matter, but then some people just become thinking, okay, well, actually, no, we're talking about black, as in the darkest shade black people's lives matter, and the light-skinned people have always been having it easy, so it's now our turn to have it easy. You know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? To be
Yes,
relevant.
I do. Yes, I do understand what you're saying, because using those shades, those shades in between, like I'm not as black as this person, or I'm not as white as this person. That's another division that's been created for us. So it's like, okay, I believe in because the slave masters did that for a long time to divide blacks. They divided the people who lived in the house to the people who lived on the field. So that has taken on a whole life of itself and come into our very households to where we start believing that too. So to be able to get past that, you have to make your family and yourself more aware of who you are. What does it mean to be a black person? For me, it's not just the color of my skin, it's the content of my character. It's like, what do I do for my community? That really makes me black. What do I do for my community? How do I help people, not just who look like me, but look like the world? I mean, who are the world? Dr. King, people don't understand. Dr. King wasn't just about civil rights. Dr. King was about educating white America into basically trying to get them to become more aware that they are part of the world, not apart from the world. That was like one of his main goals, not just to protect black rights and to help black people, but to get white people to understand that they are in the same boat with the rest of us, which they could not understand.
Exactly, classism.
Yeah, they just.
Yeah, and the fact that you brought up Dr. Martin Luther King is great, because I want to ask you a question on him. So what's your position on Martin Luther King and his policy on non-violent protests? Because obviously there are various people in America who feel that that's like this, there were great, great leaders, had ideas, and I can't remember the name of the guy, but the fact I'll know it and I'll put it up. But what's your position on that whole idea of non-violent protest?
I still believe in that. Still believe in Dr. King. I'm a Dr. King disciple, not just because
great.
I'm following blindly or nothing like that. I believe in nonviolence, because violence begets violence. I don't care what anyone says. So if I have a gun and if I have to defend myself, yes, that's one thing. But for me to go out and just destroy things and tear things up, no, I'm not going to do that. And that's where I think a lot of young blacks in this country are starting to lose focus, because if they become violent and destroy things, that's what this racist government would really want them to do. So it can be able to prey upon them and do things to them and be justified in murdering people, justified in going to neighborhoods, no-knock policies, shooting people, to be able to do whatever they want. Dr. King set an example to where through nonviolence, anything you do against that person who's being nonviolent makes you the criminal. But if we retaliate and have to fight and kill people, then we become the criminal. And I was always believing Dr. King. I love Malcolm X, don't get me wrong. A lot of things Malcolm X said was correct and right on, but violence begets violence. So, an armed insurrection against a bunch of people that you don't like or think are oppressing you will always come back to haunt you. So
absolutely. And that's the way, and that's how I view it too. And that's what we see in Palestine. That's the whole thing you're talking about is framed in Palestine. You understand what I'm trying to say to you? The way one side has been violent towards the other, and look what's come as a result of it. So I want to mention that as well. I want to ask you just a little bit about that, because obviously you're very much a human, you're very big on human rights. You're
Right.
I don't know if I'd call you a human rights activist, but you're big on human rights.
Yes, I have been. Yeah.
So again, so should we turn a blind eye to what's going on in Palestine?
No, no, no. I want to tell you what I went through. That that for a long time I really bought into the propaganda that Israel was like the innocent and wasn't doing anything wrong, because I'd been brainwashed for so long, and I admit that, for years. But like in the last 10 or 15 years, as I've seen Israel do all these things, I came to the conclusion, of course, I was wrong, that Israel has been an aggressor and trying to destroy the Palestinian people over and over again, with the complicity being, and the United States is complicit in that, because they give them money to be able to do this. And and you and I both know, when it comes down to it, the United States has gone into a lot of countries and have helped these countries. They've helped all these dictators. They've overthrown governments. It's all because they want natural resources or they want land. It's always something about money, because it always comes to the United States. The United States really has never been about democracy, and I hate to have to make people angry about that, but it really hasn't. It's been about taking over lands because they want the natural resources. And if that means exterminating people, that's what they'll do. If that means having leaders assassinated, that's what they will do. And that's what they do. So I've come to realize that the Palestinian people were the ultimate targets, and that's wrong. And we should stand with the Palestinian people, protect their rights.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard. I can't take a position on it. For me, it's like there's so much sides of that story. It's hard to understand really where to stand with it. But I got to leave it to the audience to make up their own minds, because again, there are so many people that will feel differently about what you're saying, but also will understand. End of the day, it's, you got the Goliath, David and the Goliath scenario going on as well. So there's got to be a better way to deal with it. Nobody, you don't. What we're seeing is kind of it's reminiscent of what you see in Afghanistan. You just got the people in the communities. There's great forces from the rest of the world come in. They create this situation where the people feel they're threatened. Then all of a sudden the terrorists are, blowing people up, and it becomes a bigger problem. But they never really change anything. Nothing gets changed.
Right.
Nothing gets changed. People die, and then you find at the end of it, it was all about oil.
Right.
It was all about money. It's about something else. So So for me, I don't know. I'm not on the fence. I'm just like, okay, I just don't feel I'm in a position to really have a say on it, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I love the fact we're having a conversation and you're putting forward what your thoughts are in regards to it. So anyway, there's a book that I've read, or I haven't actually read it. I've covered some of the synopsis on the book, and it's called The Three Mothers. And where you're talking about, or it's where the story is talking about these Martin Luthor King, James Baldwin, and Malcolm X's mothers being the actual. They've attributed all of the positives of what they've done or what they've achieved down to the influence of their mothers. So what would we actually attribute on that same note? What would we ascribe, the negatives of Black people to? I'm getting at. So these are the positives. When someone's strong, they describe it to the strength of the Black mother. What should we describe the weaknesses of the Black community to?
Let me think about that. I'm trying to think, because I grew up with a lot of negative things in the Black community and within my family too. But I've been able to overcome that, and I had a strong father. But I don't think it's just not necessarily just the fathers, because there's a stereotype, and it's not really true, about the absence of the Black father. Black fathers are never around.
This is why I've asked you the question. That's why I asked you the question specifically, to see how that could be framed.
Yes, I don't think it's just not necessarily, but I think it's the breakdown of the family unit in the Black community. Because what I've noticed, that between when my father was growing up, because he's born in 1925. So from say even before that period up into the 50s and the 60s, for him, is that my grandfather passed away when he was really young. So he grew up with a very strong mother. But he came forward and did really well, because I think his brothers, which my uncles were around him, were very industrious. They went off to have their own businesses. They became very successful in their own right. And with that helped make him stronger too. He still went through a lot of things, but he became stronger, and that made me stronger. So I think it was basically for modern day African Americans, and maybe even some in the past, that the breakdown of the family unit, when when they lose economically, when they have let's say the 1929 stock market crash that destroyed a lot of farms. And black farms ruled this country. I mean, in the black community, that's how you survive, was off a farm. So once that was destroyed, they went to the city. But the family units weren't together like they were on the farms. Because when I was talking about my grandmother and doing all that, they did that later on in their life in the cities, but most of them feeding people and taking care of people were when they were on the farms. So the farm community held the black community together. And once the black community started migrating and going to the cities, I think they really started falling apart. And that's when the family unit falls apart. And of course, the children from that end up like in the streets, end up in drugs, end up in prison, end up dead, early ages, all this stuff starts happening. When you have a strong family unit, people tend to do really well, live longer lives. I mean, that's just a statistical fact. So when the family units fell apart, back from, let's say, the 1940s and 50s, going up into the 60s, the civil rights movement opened up a lot of things, but it opened up a lot of things for people to come from the rural community and go into the city. And I don't know, that didn't really turn out so well for a lot of people going to the cities, because once they left the rural family life, they ended up in cities and ended up in slums and poor areas because they weren't getting the economic stimulus like the other parts of the cities were. So they had to basically just scramble and try to survive, like the South Side of Chicago, areas of Philadelphia, New York, LA, Watts, those areas like that became very impoverished, and people really had to struggle and they really had to come out of that. So I can only imagine the damage that was done to families living in those areas, because there wasn't the education wasn't there and the jobs weren't there. So, people were struggling and having a hard time. So I really believe, back to like what you're saying, I really believe that when family units fell down, that's when the black community really started having problems. I see that things, for me, what I'm looking at, I'm seeing things coming back stronger in Black America. People have more pride and they're stronger with their communities. And that is starting to reverberate more and more. I see more and more African-American men graduating, which is really good, because for a long time, African-American men weren't graduating from college and weren't going on to do really well. It was like rapping and sports. It's like the only two things that were really like for black men. Black men were only seeing that. And education could actually do really well.
So you said a word there. You mentioned the word, and I had to pick up on it. You said the word pride.
Yes.
So we talked about before about the mother being that strength that's allowed for those men to be a certain thing. And now you're talking about pride. Where did this pride come from then? This new pride you're saying it's changing. Where does this new pride coming from?
I think it's a synergy of just even before the Black Lives Movement was happening, that people started to see, African Americans in this country started to see how things were really not for them. I mean, I think for a long time, like in the 80s, coming from the 70s into the 80s, a lot of young Black people, because I grew up in that time period, believed that, I can do pretty much anything that I want, which is still true. But they didn't really see all the trappings and things that were happening. Crack was big at that time. All this stuff was happening, destroying the Black community. And so the only thing that seemed, like I said, the only thing that seemed to be there was rapping, sports, and really nothing else. They didn't understand education was a key. But then once that started, that wave of all that destruction in the 80s started going down, like you were talking about, is that now coming to the 90s and the 2000s, that the generation that's now coming up actually sees that there's more to life than that. They're seeing that I don't have to play sports and I don't have to rap. I can actually get an education. And that really wasn't instilled into Black America from all the media. Because you remember, we have to deal with the propaganda here that as a Black male, you only matter because you rap and you play sports. I mean, seriously, I'm not even making that up. That's all I ever see. That we're always something on television to be exploited. We don't control, you never see Black people who have small businesses, who do well. I never see it in the media. And I don't even see it in the town that I'm in. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas. Supposedly a very liberal town, but the minority-owned businesses here, they never in the newspaper. No one ever talks about how good they are or how well or what they contribute to the community. So you see things happening that a lot of good things that are happening in the Black community are never seen in the media. So of course, generations growing up don't see that. All they see is Hollywood, sports, and rapping, and that's it. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear what you say.
that's that.
Yeah,
That's your only choice. That's, and of
but
course it's not
that's what we saw. That's what we saw in the UK, and I think
right.
that's had a detrimental effect on impact on the black community in the UK. To be
Wow.
fair,
Wow.
absolutely. I have young kids who otherwise would have explored other identities. They consider the black identity to be what they get from America. It's like we kind of we look at as America as just like the big brothers. Like, there are big brothers and sisters in America.
Wow.
So when you guys kind of mess up, we kind of mess up, because
Yes.
someone's going to make money out of that. It's always going to be someone who's going to exploit that in the UK. The music industry here will exploit those opportunities and build something smaller than, but something that they can use to kind of export back to America. And it hasn't worked. Like rap music, they were trying to export back in its 80s and 90s, whatever, or noughties. They were trying to export black, rap music to America, and they weren't buying it. So young black kids would always copy the American accent. It just weren't working. And only now we got something that we can export back to America. But we get a lot of our identity from the American people. And all we got was sport, and all we got was the music, and it was rap music, which, don't get me wrong, I love rap music, but there's a negative side, as you will know, to rap music, because the story, the truth, what you're seeing in the American truth is a very different truth to the UK truth. And we're almost as if we're trying to replicate that same truth in the UK, hence why we now have issues with gun crime. When someone will argue with me about it and say, how can you say that? But the reality is, I see a correlation with what goes on in America with what's going on in the UK. Are you still there? You've frozen. Your picture's frozen.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay.
You probably missed all of it. Did you miss that?
No, I got the part about where you're talking about the negative side of rap music and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I tried to say, yes, there's a negative side to rap music, and I'm trying to say that basically what we've done is we've taken a lot of those elements, and it's become a problem in the UK culturally. We've got, because of what we've seen, because all we got from you guys in America, because what was projected in the media was negative. So that's what we went with. Do you understand? That's what I'm trying to say to you. So who do we blame for that? Who do we blame? Do we blame the music, or do we blame the story? We know we can't directly blame the music, because we know the music came from an experience in America that was created by the CIA or whoever it was that created that experience. True. But the reality is, as a result of that, we're still dealing with that today.
Wow. I'm sorry about that, because I saw that coming. When I saw rap music coming up in the 80s and stuff, and how vicious and hardcore it was, and using the N-word and calling women out of their name, I thought, I wonder what happens when later on you have a daughter and somebody calls her that name. Are you going to be mad? Well, of course you are. See, it's just crazy. And people don't understand the N-word. And it's like I tried to, and I explained this to my son and daughter. And I think people are now really catching on in general. I said, you understand that the N-word is not in any African language. I said, and you know the reason why? Because no one African created it. It was created by a white European mindset for you to be able to hold you down. And thinking you can claim a word that does not belong to your people, you cannot, because it doesn't belong to you. So the evil doesn't belong to you. You can take it and you can encapsulate yourself with it. You can say it however many times you want and think that you control it, and you don't, because it doesn't belong to you. So you're taking someone, like I said, you're taking someone else's evil and using it to beat yourself over the head. I said, and that's not who you are. I said, if you want to know one thing, you come from ancient people that have done incredible things. I said, they've just been covered up because a white European mindset in this nation needs for that to be covered up. Because if you truly discover who you are, you will always be free. No one can ever hold you down. But if you don't know who you are, it's easy to hold you down. And that's what happens in this country. The propaganda in this country, Fox News, is one of those machines. And need to say all these negative things and run these negative stereotypes, because the person, Rupert Murdoch, who runs it, he's nothing but a racist, and that's just what he needs. He needs that propaganda to keep going, to hold you down, because if you believe everything comes off the TV, then you'll that's where you get your identity from. And that's wrong. You should get your identity basically from your parents and your education, not from what a television tells you. But that's not how it is. The television has too much power over here. And people believe that only black person you see is rapping or playing sports. You don't see them as a doctor. You don't see them as a business owner who owns a restaurant who's doing good in his community. They don't promote that. promote Black doctors who are doing really well in communities and helping underprivileged areas. They don't promote any of that. See, so
I've got to cut you there. We're going to probably end it very soon, but it upsets me because obviously, we have this obsession with color. We have this obsession with racial identity because of what's been created by the media.
Right.
And, it's made we spend so much time dealing with that rather than dealing with us as human beings and what we could be doing collectively.
Right.
And obviously you've got to ask yourself, well, there's got to be something in any buffoon, and I'm a buffoon. If I can sit there and say, look, there's something not making any sense here. We're at odds with each other because of these racial identities that have been fabricated or constructed. How are we going to get to the point? How? And that's the question. That's what I want to end on with you is, when are we going to get to the point? Because what I see, there's another thing I see, and I want to add this to the question, is that I see white people, good white people, helping, or I call people white brothers and sisters, our black, white, and brothers and sisters, and so forth.
Yes.
I see a lot of these steps that we've taken, and this progress that we've had, even with Black Lives Matter, a lot of that was predicated on the fact that white people allowed us, or white brothers and sisters allowed us to have those I won't use the word opportunities, but they said, not even forget the word allowed. They've said to us, look, we're going to work with you to get to the next step.
Yes.
And we should see that as a positive, and we should say, you know what, wow, this is, we're working together. People are making people are supporting our progress. But a lot of the time, I'm seeing is everyone's going, look what we've achieved. And they're attributing those achievements to what they've done by applying pressure, rather than recognizing it's been in acquiescence. It's been a decision between the two to achieve something. Do you understand?
Yes.
Like if you look at the media now, if you look at the media today, you'll see a lot more black people on TV right now since Black Lives Matters movement.
Right, true.
Who has the power? Who has the power to put those people on TV? It's white TV, it's white channels, or it's our white brothers I don't want to use this word allowing, making it possible for those things to happen. So how are we going to get to the point where we stop thinking that way and recognizing that, if we come together, we can achieve something? How can we get to that point, do you think?
What you just said is basically what is now in enacting Dr. King's ultimate plan. Was like, I think you and I talked about earlier, Dr. King was really trying to get white people to understand that they are part of this, not apart from. You are part of this. And so for you to do your part, you need to support not just only black people, Hispanic, Asians, you support the world. And so I think a lot of the synergy that's happening for you seeing all the African Americans that are on television and what's now happening and businesses are growing and all this is because a lot of white people aren't allowing anything. White people are now coming to an awareness that they are part of the world. They're not apart from it. They don't control it and they don't own it. And when they start understanding that, they see us as people. So when you start seeing me as a person, then you are going to help me. When you see me as less as a person, you're not going to help me. You're going to oppress me and keep fighting me. So I think it's not so much an awareness for Black Americans. Black Americans have been fighting this stuff since day one. It's awareness is happening for white America. It's starting to become aware that we need to be together. We need to work together.
We need love. It's got to be. It's got to be love. It's got to be love.
Yes, it's got to be love, and that's what Dr. King.
It's like you've got a mixed race child, mixed race children. That's love,
Right.
And whatever's going on, I've got that. I'm looking at my children and I'm thinking, I want them to grow up in a world where there's love, not this division and not this kind of this idea, whatever color you are, but there is love that's driving all of this stuff. Not this, okay, well, I'm looking after my own, I'm supporting my own. That divisive mentality has done nothing good for this world.
That's right, and that's what's happened in all communities. It's not just the Black community; it's happened in the white community, Asian, and Hispanic. All communities is where people have become, especially in the United States, this individualism. Which being an individual is cool, but you need to understand that as an individual, you have a responsibility to your community. If I'm doing well, it doesn't do me any good for me and my family to do well when the people across the street are starving to death. That doesn't make any sense. I need to do my part. If I'm part of this community, help the community. Don't hoard all this wealth. Don't do all this stuff where no one is going to be able to progress, but just you. That's crazy.
Absolutely,
That's what
absolutely.
Dr. King was about. Dr. King was about everyone needs to progress, not just Black America, white America, Asians, everyone needs to progress. And for us to progress, we need to be together. And if you're against me and you're fighting against me and I'm fighting against these people, we are all divided and nothing gets done but destruction.
Ollie, on that note, I think I'll leave it. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed it, and hope the
I
audience
did.
will enjoy
Incredible,
it.
incredible, great.
Thank you. And I've got to give my thanks to Matthew, my brother Matthew, for putting me on to you. You know, it's wonderful because not everyone wants to have this conversation, and you're willing to. You're where are you now? You're in the States. You're in America.
Yes. I'm in Lawrence, Kansas. Yes, just outside of Kansas City, Missouri, where 18th and Vine, where the great musicians, the greatest of the great, performed. Duke Ellington, Billie Holiday, all those great people. Yeah, and it's one little area. Yeah.
Well, keep doing what you're doing and keep spreading the love, my brother.
Will definitely. Hopefully, we will work together and even do even greater things.
Absolutely, that's what we've got to do. That's what we've got to do. As long as we're just keep the energy up. Like, you know, something that was said to me by Ruben Shaw. He goes, Mark-Anthony, we've got to keep the energy together. We've got to just move forward. This is the beginning of something really special, and let's just do that with all the communities of the world.
Right. No matter where they're at. Right on.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Ollie, from Clusterview, big love.
Yeah, much love to you and the family. Take care. Bye.
And you. Bye-bye, sir. Bye.